After a horrible 2015 season, the Minnesota Vikings were looking for something, any sort of spark that they could build their franchise around. They turned to the 2015 draft where they found wide receiver Shaynon Gresham out of Florida State University. After looking at him, they felt that this is a guy they could build a franchise around for years to come. Multiple trades that have never been seen in MBL before were put in place to go up and get Gresham. After mortgaging the future only 4 short years later, it looks like Gresham's about to leave the franchise in ruin. To understand where Gresham's going, you have to go back to see where Gresham came from first. Shaynon Gresham chose Florida State University as the #1 wide receiver recruit coming out of high school. He chose Florida State because he knew it had a tradition of creating NFL wide receivers, and that was his lifelong dream. While at Florida State, he broke every NCAA record for receiving, catches, touchdowns, yards. He had them all. After his redshirt sophomore year, he decided to head to the NFL draft after a Heisman Trophy candidate season. He came out of Florida State with some baggage, however. Failed PED tests, drug use, and conflicts with coaches pushed his draft stock down. Projected as only a 4th-round pick, many weren't sure if Gresham could really deal with the NFL struggles, the pressure, and everything that came along with it. As they always say, talent trumps trouble. At the NFL Combine, Gresham put on an amazing performance, running a 4.3 40, making all the drills look easy, cutting in and out of his breaks, and catching everything away from the body. He interviewed with multiple teams there where they asked him questions about the PED use, about the fights with teammates and coaches. Gresham's always had an interesting personality, driving many people to believe that he would be a trouble in the locker room. What they couldn't tell is if they could trust him, on or off the field. Many people thought that this may help him climb up the draft boards with his performance, but the lingering issues around his personality would always remain.
So entering into the draft, we were looking at a few different players. We held the 9th pick in the draft. Shaynon Gresham caught our eye as being probably the best wide receiver in the draft. We knew he had a couple PED issues, but it's something we were willing to overlook. We thought maybe we could change that aspect of him. So going into the actual draft day, we had him projected probably in the 2nd round. But we knew he was climbing on some people's board, and then right before the draft, we found out that the Bengals were looking to take him, and they had traded up above us in the 1st round. So we had to try to cut a last-minute deal to get back in front of them to grab Gresham. So we made a pretty controversial trade with the Texans. A lot of people thought we gave up too much. We traded our 1st-round pick that year, which was at 9, to move up to the 5th pick. And we also traded our 2nd pick that year, as well as our 1st-round pick for the following draft. And we were able to move up to that 5th spot right in front of the Bengals and grab Gresham. And we still think it was a good move. It didn't help our franchise out in the long run. But he was a great player for the team in the time that we had him.
Controversial it was. To trade that much away for a position player that wasn't a quarterback was something unheard of. Could a wide receiver really be worth everything that was traded away? Many experts believed that it was too much and it would hamstring the franchise going forward. While ownership believed it was the right call, many had questions around it. Gresham got off to a quick start as a rookie. With 80 catches, 1,600 yards, and 14 touchdowns, he was everything the Vikings had hoped he would be. Rumors still swirled about PED use, but it was no doubt that he was the player they had wanted all along. During the 2019 season, about halfway through the year, after a game with the Chicago Bears where Gresham had 11 catches for over 300 yards, he was tested for PEDs. After a positive PED test was confirmed, Gresham was suspended for 2 games. While his relationship with the Vikings would never be the same, it was hard to deny that the guy had still performed the way they had always hoped.
So after Gresham got suspended for PEDs, we were a little disappointed in him. We thought he had moved past that part in his life because he had some troubles with it in college. He went 3 strong seasons for us. no problems, perfectly clean. We get into our contract year with him, and he kind of falls off the wagon a little bit, goes back to his old ways. We think that he's still clean after this point. I think maybe it's just a little slip up, but the relationship did become a little shaky. We agree with the league suspending him for 2 games. We would have done so otherwise without that, but the relationship got a little shaky.
While the relationship may have gotten a little shaky, it was just another setback in the relationship for the Vikings and Gresham over the long run. While Gresham has put up spectacular numbers over his time in Minnesota, it hadn't resulted in many wins. At 0-15-1 after the suspension year, the Vikings had to look to go another route. With very little left in financial flexibility, it appeared that Gresham's time in Minnesota was over. It was common knowledge throughout the league that the Vikings didn't have the financial ability to re-sign Gresham. They did have one choice, however. They could choose to franchise tag him, choosing to pay him as one of the top wide receivers in the league. However, the Vikings chose not to do this. It's only known to the Vikings why they chose not to do this, but it does show maturation in the ownership process.
Our franchise never wanted to look to move forward without Gresham. He was always going to be the centerpiece of our franchise. But after realizing what he has done to the team, we have accepted that no one player can be the centerpiece for an entire franchise. So,
with the Vikings opting to let him go, it is believed that Shaynon Gresham will receive the biggest contract in MBL history when he hits the free agent market soon. While many teams will be looking to get Gresham, they must pause for a second and think, will the same issues reoccur with them, the PED use, the possible suspensions? Only time will tell. One thing's for sure though, Shaynon Gresham will become a very rich man.